Well, good evening. It's quite an honor to be invited to be the keynote speaker at the Meat Industry Hall of Fame induction ceremony and dinner. With all of the distinguished guests that are here this evening, including many past inductees into this Hall of Fame. You know, this is an industry that I love. I work in the beef industry side of it, obviously, at the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. Prior to joining NCBA, I worked at Fleischman Hillard International Communications and worked a lot on the meat processing side of this industry. I actually got my start in this industry working on E. coli in the mid-1990s, when that really hit our industry hard, for the Beef Industry Food Safety Council, which is where I first met many of you in this room. I had an opportunity at that point to put together the communications plan for the beef industry to deal with consumer communications around E. coli and E. coli related recalls. Many of you may know I got my start in my career working on Bob Dole's 1988 presidential campaign. I grew up in Kansas. How many of you remember Bob Dole? Okay. Good, because I'm in good company here. You know, I was speaking recently to some ag students at the University of Wisconsin in River Falls, and I mentioned Bob Dole in my introduction, and I got a lot of blank stares. And, you know, I then asked, how many of you know who Senator Bob Dole is? And there wasn't a single hand in the room that knew who Bob Dole was. And you want to talk about a humbling punch in the gut. I mean, here's a guy who's a World War II hero. His right shoulder was blown off by mortar fire on Hill 913 in the Italian Alps. A Kansas boy who was recruited in the 10th Mountain Division. They sent him to Colorado to train. He'd never even seen a pair of skis in his life. And they sent him off to Italy to go fight in World War II. He comes home, thankfully came home, because he almost didn't. He was left for dead on the battlefield with a M marked in blood on his forehead. To indicate that they'd given him morphine and to put him out of his pain. You know, then spent his entire career representing Kansas, representing American agriculture, representing all of us, the citizens of the United States of America in the Congress and the Senate. Ran for president 3 times unsuccessfully. I worked on his second campaign. My dad worked on his first campaign, and you know, he didn't get very far on that one, just about Iowa. We made it as far as New Hampshire, I think, in '88. And then in 1996, neither one of us worked on his campaign, and he got the nomination. So I don't know if there's any correlation there, but, you know, I will always remember Bob Dole that way. What will you be remembered for? I met a guy named Kurt Moyer early in my career. Does anybody here know Kurt Moyer of Moyer Packing Company? I had the opportunity to spend a week in Souderton, Pennsylvania with the Moyer Packing Company during probably the most difficult time in their business's history. The Moyer family, 3rd generation Mennonite family-owned business. You know, great-grandpa Moyer had started by just slaughtering an extra animal and selling it out of the wagon to his neighbors. Had grown to the 10th largest packing company in the country at the time, the largest on the East Coast, and they were hit with an E. coli recall. They had to, I was on actually family vacation in Colorado, living in Kansas City at the time, and I got the call from Ella Roush, who was their HR department person, who said, Darren, we've got a presumptive positive, and we want to know if you can come to Souderton and help us through this situation. So I left my family on vacation in Colorado, and I went out there and I said, honey, don't worry, I'll be back in about 3 days. I've been through these before, and I know the drill. Well, unfortunately, on day 3, they got another presumptive positive and had to issue a second recall. Our main talking point during the first recall is this is the first recall in this 125-year-old company's history. That talking point didn't work so well when it was. This is the second recall in our 125-year history in the past week. What was happening at that time, you may remember, there was a Milwaukee Sizzler restaurant. And so people had gotten sick after eating at the Milwaukee Sizzler restaurant. There was a 4-year-old girl named Brianna Creefall who was in the hospital and was not doing well. And I asked Ella when she first made that phone call, I said, did any of your product go to Wisconsin? Did any of your product go to Milwaukee? And could it have been served at that Milwaukee Sizzler restaurant? And she said, I don't know. We'll see what we can find out. Man, we're so much more advanced today, folks, than we were back then. And this was just 2000. This was 14 years ago. We went through the weekend not knowing, because we didn't have a phone number for the Cisco distributor in Baraboo, Wisconsin, to be able to call them on a weekend and find out if any of the product that had been sent to them from Moyer Packing Company went to that Sizzler restaurant. It was a very, very difficult time for the Moyer family. We sat around in the one-room schoolhouse that sits on their property that served as our makeshift crisis war room, with pictures of great-grandpa Moyer on the wall and all the classes and all the Moyer family that had been through this little schoolhouse. And Kurt and his daughter and his son, who were sitting there around the table in tears, many times thinking about this 4-year-old girl who died that weekend, and thinking that maybe their product had caused that 4-year-old girl's death. One of the most difficult things I've worked on in my career. And I realized this isn't about communications. This isn't about public relations. This isn't about spin. This is about people's lives. The lives of a little 4-year-old girl. My daughter was 4 at the time, so it kind of hit home. And I'll never forget one day when Kurt was sitting around that table and we were talking about when the second recall came along, we had the presumptive positive. We said, we've got to get that product out of the stores. We've got to get that product out of the stores. But we sat around the table and we asked the lawyer, what's our legal obligation? We asked the sales guy, how are our customers going to Kurt asked the sales guy, how are our customers going to react to this? How's Giant Foods going to react when we tell them we're going to come take the ground beef out of their store? We asked, all around the table what the implications would be. And finally, Kurt Moyer said, okay, but what is the right thing to do? We know we have a problem. We know we have E. coli in our product for some reason. We don't know why it's there. And we know that it could make people sick. Now Brianna Creefall, as it turned out, that was not their product that went to the Milwaukee Sizzler, but that was weighing certainly heavily on our minds at the time. And they decided to send their own employees in their own trucks to every store where they knew they had product and go and get it out, not issuing a recall, not issuing a market withdrawal or anything like that. Just go get the damn product out of the stores. That was the right thing to do. And it taught me a valuable lesson that I will always remember Kurt Moyer for. What will you be remembered for? Bo Reagan, Dave Thino, folks like Mohammed Kumari. These are past inductees. Jim Marsden, one of your inductees tonight, who I had an opportunity to work with on a press conference in Washington, D.C. for the Food Safety Consortium to advocate for irradiation of ready-to-eat meat products. Dr. Russell Cross, a name that I've heard for so many years and I knew as this legend, and now I just know as a good, decent human being who's actually a very gracious and humble man. Their work has saved lives. There is no doubt about it. Their work has saved lives. The children whose lives were saved may never know their names. The parents of those children will never know their names. But I will always remember these gentlemen for the lives that they have saved. What will you be remembered for? Colonel Sanders, I'm looking at the list of Hall of Fame inductees. Ray Kroc, Don Tyson, Frank Perdue. Yeah, it's hard for me to say some of those names because they're chicken guys, but Paul Engler, Sheldon Lavin, who I had an opportunity to work for. I did crisis planning for OSI for 8 years. I've really been thinking about them as they went through this issue in China, knowing that hurts that company deeply because they didn't ever want to be a public name. They wanted to be just behind the scenes, doing the work, doing the hard work of producing high quality, safe, wholesome beef products for McDonald's, Oscar Mayer, other companies. Paul Engler, an innovator in the feeding business. Bobby Hadoff, just in the meat business. Eldon Roth, BPI, a guy who found a way to recover 10 to 12 pounds of extra lean beef per carcass and make it as safe as he could possibly make it. Had an opportunity to tour their facility recently, and if you haven't done that, you have got to go up to Dakota Dunes, South Dakota, and go see that facility. It's absolutely amazing. Pioneers in the meat industry, these folks, who've changed the lives of millions of people around this country around the world by providing affordable, high-quality protein that is available to any one of us any day of the week. We can walk into the grocery store. You know, I never cease to marvel at the fact I can go into the grocery store, King Soopers in my neighborhood in Castle Rock, Colorado, 24/7, 365. They literally never close the doors on this grocery store. It doesn't even really have a front door. It's got a gate that can pull down. And I can walk in there any time of the day or night and buy a ribeye or a bone-in ribeye or a high-choice ribeye or a low-choice ribeye. I mean, that's just a miracle. And these guys are the ones who have innovated and got us there. That's what I'll remember them for. Bobby Hadoff. You know what I'm going to remember Bobby Hadoff for? I spoke at a NAMA meeting down in Lake Las Vegas. And here's this guy, this legend in the industry, and he saw me and he said, hey, I saw your speech today. You want to go out to dinner with me and my wife and some folks from my company? He invited me out to dinner. And I sat around this table thinking, I'm sitting around the table with these legends in the meat industry. So cool. What will you be remembered for? Gary Smith, Dr. Temple Grandin, the work that these folks have done forever changed the lives of animals that are raised for food by improving the way they are handled, improving the way that they're slaughtered. You know, and I'm quite certain those animals will never remember Temple for the work that she's done, but I will. And you know, just regular consumers know her through the HBO special and through her books and through her tremendous work with the Autism Society. You know, just showing people that you can have a life living with autism and you can do amazing things. You can accomplish amazing things. That's what I will always remember Temple for. What will you be remembered for? Patrick Boyle, Barry Carpenter, Rosemary Mucklow, leaders of this industry through industry trade associations, bringing together people to improve food safety, bringing people together to advance this industry forward. What will you be remembered for? I can't give this presentation without talking about my dad. You know, my dad is the reason I'm involved in agriculture. He has a love for agriculture. He didn't grow up on the farm, but he had a love for agriculture. He was the Kansas director of the Farmers Home Administration back in the 70s. And then he lost his job when Jimmy Carter was elected, and that's one of the reasons I'm still a Republican today. And you know, he lost his job, but Senator Bob Dole offered him a job in Washington, D.C., and he went to Washington. He was the chief of the staff of the Senate Ag Committee during the 1980 Farm Bill, and then got involved through co-ops, through farmer co-ops, in third world development. And he worked on a program in India they called the White Revolution. We know what the Green Revolution is, but this was the White Revolution through the dairy industry of revolutionizing life for farmers, for small subsistence dairy farmers in India. Today, he's in Kiev in the Ukraine, where he's been working for the past 20 years to help privatize the agricultural systems in that former Soviet republic. Why? And I don't know where that passion comes from, but he's got this passion for helping smaller farmers around the world improve their lives and get to the level that we are in the United States of America and enjoy the luxury that we have of the world's safest, most abundant, most affordable food supply. But you know what I'll remember my dad for? I went to Washington, D.C. during the tractorcade to go visit him. He left and went ahead of our family. And we were living back in Topeka, Kansas. I was 16 years old, and I went out there, and we walked around for hours and hours and hours meeting with farmers and talking to farmers about their concerns. So he could relay those back to Senator Dole, and we could try to do something about it to help improve their lives. I'll never forget that about my dad. I'll never forget the road trips I took with him to toy shows. He was a toy farm implement collector. We'd go to toy shows. Those long hours in the car riding with Dad. Those are the things that I'll remember about my dad, not the fact that he's over in the Ukraine trying to change the world. What will you be remembered for? You know, one of the things my dad told me, one of the life lessons he taught me, I grew up in the Baptist church. We were sitting in church one day in the pew there, and the pastor was going on and on and on. And my dad leaned over and he said, "Son, always remember, if you want to be seen, stand up. If you want to be heard, speak up. If you want to be appreciated, shut up." So I'll end on this note. What do I want to be remembered for? You know, at the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, I've had the wonderful opportunity to launch a program called the Masters of Beef Advocacy, which is all about empowering farmers and ranchers to share their own personal stories. And I'd love to be remembered for that as the Dean of Students of the Masters of Beef Advocacy program. But you know what I really want to be remembered for? I've got 2 daughters, one who just graduated college, and she left 3 weeks ago for China, and she is teaching English in China right now at a university. She is a wonderful woman who is going to impact many, many lives. My other daughter just went to Kansas University, just started her freshman year there. And she's a smart gal with a mind for business, and she wants to get a business degree, and she's going to go out and she's going to do great things in her life. To me, that's the most important thing I'll do in my life, is raising those 2 girls. That's what I want to be remembered for. I want to be remembered as a good brother, a good son, a good husband, a good father of those 2 girls. That's what I want to be remembered for. What do you want to be remembered for? Thank you, and congratulations to all of tonight's honors.
Thank you, Darren. So big hand for Darren Williams.